Well, thank you, Chancellor Graham, to begin with. Bill Graham and I have known each other for a long time. You have said many things to me, nothing like that. And I must say that in the years to come, I look forward to reminding you of every single word. Let me simply say that I hope someday I get the opportunity to reciprocate. Jim Peterson and I have served with many people in cabinet, many people in government. And I've got to say that the career of Bill Graham, which began with him winning the gold medal as Dean Moran said, but also took him as one of, I think, the first members of my class to go in really to deal with international law, which I'd like to discuss with you this morning a bit. It's been an outstanding career in terms of public service, in law, and in government. I've got to say as well, you know, Bill having won the gold medal, I think that does explain. Take a look at that, and then take a look at this. I think he melted the gold medal down to get the gilt that's up there. On the one other hand, there are 1, 2, 3. We got you outnumbered, Jim Prentice, 3-1. And I like our colors. I want to thank Chancellor Peterson. I want to thank President Naylor, Dean Moran. And I want to thank all of the faculty and you, ladies and gentlemen, for the honor that has just been bestowed upon me. To have received an honorary degree from one of the world's great universities is humbling enough. But when that university is the University of Toronto, where both Sheila and I graduated, I cannot help but be deeply touched. And finally, and most importantly, to you, the graduates who have worked so hard to get here, let me congratulate you. This is your day, and all I can say is to each and every one of you that I am very grateful that you've allowed me to share a little bit of it with you. Now, there are those of you it's water. There are those of you who would ask yourselves, what did Paul Martin do when he was in law school to deserve this award? Well, you've already heard from Mayo that I didn't win the gold medal. Bill Graham deserved it. Did you? So the question is, why am I here? Well, the answer is an answer. I am here to correct a great miscarriage of justice that was done to me in my graduating year. It wasn't not getting the gold medal. There were 60 others ahead of me. It is I lost my case in front of the moot court. Now, this was despite my acute analysis, despite my meticulous preparation and my brilliant presentation of argument. Inexplicably, the judges, all of whom were faculty, failed to grasp the finer points of law that I had raised. And rarely has there been a greater injustice, an instance of justice gone awry. However, be that as it may, I have no hard feelings, not much. But I want you to know that I regard this honorary degree as reparation. Reparation towards the recognition that had I won the case, instead of a close friend who became a judge winning the moot court, I might have won, and I would be on the court today, a position which you will understand certainly has more job security than that of being Prime Minister. Now, having gotten that off my chest, to the matter at hand, I've been asked to share with you the steps to take to a successful legal career. However, as Dean Moran said, never having practiced law, this does present a bit of a difficulty. But on the other hand, it does give me the opportunity to raise with you the importance of a new initiative that is going to be offered at the law school next year, a program which some of you may want to consider in time. Now, I'm sure you're saying to yourselves, is he kidding? We are just graduating, and he's telling us to go back to school. So let me explain. It's a master's program entitled the Global Professional Master of Laws. Now, I learned about it the other day when I was talking to Professor Trebilco. I asked him, why was it that as the spread of globalization widens, that so much of his space is taken up by economists, by engineers, by sociologists, and so very little by lawyers? Now, my point was that one would have thought that as the world grew smaller and the interdependence of nations became the order of the day, that the rule of law would have become the dominant ethic across the world, and its practitioners the major players. It was then he told me of the new program. And so why, you ask, do I think that this is such an important initiative? Well, one answer is, of course, that not everybody in the world gets their case law from the Ontario reports. And increasingly, whether you're working for a Canadian mining company operating in Africa or whether you're practicing law in Barrie or in Toronto, family law, the issue of conflict of laws, and even more to the point, the need to understand how different value systems permeate the making of laws may well determine your success and that of your clients. Now, I know you understand this, and so rather than belaboring the point, I'd like to approach the issue from another perspective, in a way, the one that Bill raised in his introduction. One that has become, in my opinion, increasingly important in the last number of years as the shifts in the world's political winds go from gentle breeze to typhoon. Not surprisingly, for most of the last century, the primacy of national sovereignty, as determined by the great powers, has dominated whatever there was of the global legal system. For instance, U.S. corporate law, British maritime law, the veto power of European competition law. And whenever this became untenable, the pressures of the world's superpower, the United States, has tended to fill the void. We're clearly, given the rise of China, India, and the other resurgent economies, those days are over. Thus, it is more urgent than ever that we reform the old institutions of global governance and that, in fact, where necessary, we build new ones. Even more to the point, when we do so, it is lawyers who must set the context. The answer cannot be left to the squabbling of economists. The basic question that the world has to address: why would we build an international model that has all the market freedoms of our national economies, but none of its protections? The fact is, despite all of our talk about globalization over the course of the last 25 years, today's financial crisis, the one we are now living in, shows just how unprepared the world's governments were and still are when faced with a global economy whose problems lie beyond the scope of purely national solutions. Nowhere is this more true than in the case of today's banking crisis, which began in Europe and in the United States, but the consequences have now spread far and wide throughout the global economy. The reason for this, quite simply, is that as things currently stand in the global financial system, it cannot deal with the reality of contagion, as economic pandemic and institutional rot skip from country to country and from continent to continent. The fundamental problem that is front and center in today's crisis is not just the exposure to risk within a nation's borders. It is the exposure to risk, the cross-exposure to risk that transcends national borders. What's the issue? The issue is in the definition of sovereignty, a definition which was established 350 years ago in the Treaty of Westphalia and which focused only on sovereign rights. And the issue today, such as the interdependence of nation in 2011, that the definition of sovereignty must now include sovereign duties and responsibilities as well. This is true in the case of climate change. It is true in the case of pandemic, the threat of pandemic disease, of food security, of cyber crime, and I'm sure as you have studied, the responsibility to protect. It is true in almost every instance involving the interaction of nations. For example, returning to the financial crisis, when the U.S. and European financial players created toxic assets, subprime mortgages, and sold them around the world to everyone's detriment, was that not an infringement on the rest of the world's sovereignty? Is today's global recession itself not the result of the infringement on the sovereignty of every single country that has been affected by the failure of the European and American banking systems to exercise minimum standards of prudence? Well, it's because of questions like this that I believe that the legal profession around the world must stop playing the role of wallflower at the global party. Now, is this urgent? Well, more than we will ever know. For if the bank problems in the West have brought the economy to its knees, ask yourself what's going to happen to the economy when the Chinese and Indian banks become as dominant globally as are their American and European counterparts today, and a major Chinese bank fails, or there's a mortgage meltdown in India. Therein, I believe, lies the real challenge for your generation of lawyers. And the answer, it seems to me, is pretty straightforward. It is to recognize that global rules, global principles, and standards judicially enforced do not infringe on national sovereignty. Rather, they strengthen it by enabling national governments to solve problems that transcend their borders. That's the argument that I believe that all of you in the legal profession going ahead must make if the interdependence of nations is to be a benefit to the world and not a threat. And that is why, Dean Moran, you and the faculty are to be so congratulated. The new program on global law reflects a state of mind that is sorely needed. And I hope over the years its reach can be expanded. For example, there is no doubt that as a result of the bank crisis, the banking industry will never be the same again. Well, I believe that for the very same reason, the practice of law will never be the same again, and that you will truly be the first generation of lawyers without borders. And indeed, the process is already underway with the attempt to make globalization work better with the creation of the G20. And this is but the tip of the iceberg. This is but the beginning. And because of this, to all of you who are graduating here today, I cannot tell you how much I envy you. You will live in a world that has never been seen before. And for Canada's lawyers and for each and every one of you, it can be one of unprecedented opportunity. And I know you will handle it well. You will do so for many reasons, but not the least of which is that you are graduates of one of the world's great law schools. You are graduates of one of the world's great universities. So all I can say is do well and good luck. And by the way, for those of you who didn't win at the moot court, your time will come. Thank you very much.